If you want to build a personal brand that matters, a personal brand that people will remember, and a personal brand that makes an impact, then you need to bring out more of yourself. It's very easy to chalk everything up to imposter syndrome. As long as you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and you're trying to improve and go after things that make you grow, you're gonna feel afraid. Successful people were not necessarily smarter or more skilled than me, but rather successful people. Today, I'm sharing with you how I stopped feeling like an imposter and how I learned to appreciate the unique value that I bring into this world. Having gone through a decade in my corporate career and now getting into content creation, I still battle imposter syndrome. I found 3 ways to deal with it and embrace my worth. Here's the first key point. The first key point is to recognize what imposter syndrome is and what imposter syndrome is not. Dr. Tara Holliday, who is a imposter syndrome coach and specializes in that area, defines imposter syndrome as feeling of being a fraud despite success. Understanding the basic fundamental definition of imposter syndrome, with imposter syndrome being the feeling of being a fraud despite evident success. And this was a definition that Dr. Tara Holliday, who is an expert and a specialist at imposter syndrome and is a coach in that realm, talked about in one of the videos that I watched. And Dr. Tara distinguishes that there is a difference between true imposter syndrome and just the fear, the natural fear of trying something new. So when I understood the difference between being a beginner at something, being new at something, and feeling that fear of not being good enough because it's something that's new and it's something that I'd never done before, and that is completely normal, versus imposter syndrome, which is the feeling of all of those feelings of feeling inadequate, you're not good enough, and that everybody else is better than you, even though you have expertise in that area and somebody else would view you as some level of success in that area, but you still view yourself as someone who is not good. So this is a real key distinction, because this kind of separates the emotions in sort of different buckets. The way that I view it is, now when I go into things, when I start new things like creating content, for example, and starting this podcast and this YouTube channel, I tend to look at the field and realize that I'm not good enough, or I'm not at a certain level, or the skill set that I have is not enough. And I was chalking all of that up into imposter syndrome. But now looking at Dr. Tara's definition and how she explains it, a lot of that isn't necessarily imposter syndrome. It isn't necessarily me feeling that I'm not good enough when I do have the skills. It's more so me being new at something, meaning that I have not developed the skill set to be competent or to be an expert in the area of content creation. And I'm very new into the field, and it's a lot of new things, having to learn now to shoot videos, edit videos, post videos, create thumbnails, and all the different things that go into content creation. So the feelings that I feel when I approach this, of fear, of feeling like maybe I am way out of my realm doing this, is actually okay. And it's more so because I'm a beginner. It's more so because I'm new to it. And I've experienced this almost every time that I start to do something new. And whether that's in content creation or that's in mixed martial arts, when I first started mixed martial arts about 2 years ago, it always feels the same. I always go into it and feel like I'm not equipped to perform. I'm not equipped to produce results. And I have to be very careful. I have to be very careful to realize that those are just really natural symptoms of being new at something. it's not necessarily imposter syndrome. And I have to make that distinction because it's very easy to chalk everything up to imposter syndrome. But a lot of times when we're new to something, once you recognize that, it's just the newness of something. It's not that you're not good at it. It's just that it's new. You haven't developed the skills. You haven't put in the repetitions yet. And it's not natural at this point, but you can improve. You can get there. And eventually you can get to a point where you start to feel like you're not, quote unquote, an imposter. So making that distinction between those two is very important. And that's something that helped me really solidify what was imposter syndrome and what was just being new at something. So diving a little bit more into the imposter syndrome side of things, Dr. Tara explained that imposter syndrome starts when you have the initial thoughts. And these are thoughts that you go into something and you start to think that you're not good enough for whatever reason. And because you start to think that you're not good enough, you start to overthink things and really worry about what people are going to say about you, really worry about whether you're going to fail, whether you're going to succeed, whether you're going to get any results, whether you're going to crash and burn and fall flat on your face and be embarrassed in front of everybody else. So that overthinking then leads to self-criticism, where you start to criticize yourself and you start to look at yourself and say that I don't belong here. I should not even be in this realm. And all these other people around me have figured it out. I can't figure it out, and I may never be able to figure it out. So those thoughts create a pattern, a loop that really will paralyze you and keep you from doing anything that you want to do. And now this trickles down into the nervous system within our own bodies, where the body now begins to trigger that fight or flight mechanism. And in this case, when you're feeling like an imposter, when you're thinking you're not good enough, overthinking and self-criticizing, the fright aspect of the nervous system gets triggered, and that leads to anxiety, that leads to poor sleep, that leads to tension, and all the things that are going to trickle down and keep you from actually doing the thing that you want to do. Dr. Tara goes on to explain even further that there are symptoms that come out of this quote unquote cycle of imposter syndrome. And some of these behaviors include perfectionism, which really is fear masking itself as trying to be perfect. You want to do something when it's perfect, but the problem with that is there's no such thing as perfect. And if we wait until something is perfect, then we're never going to accomplish anything. Perfectionism leads into over preparation. And using the example of creating content here on YouTube, I experienced this, and because I was comparing myself to other people that are creating content and looking at my current skill set and then comparing it to someone who's years into this and feeling inadequate and feeling like I don't have what it takes, it led me to now over prepare, which means that instead of creating content from the onset with just all the equipment that I had, I now wanted to get some of the best cameras, get some of the best lightings, learn how to create thumbnails, learn how to create titles and tags and post videos, learn how to deliver content into a camera. And all of those things just really led to a cycle of, I got to keep learning more. I got to keep learning more. And that meant that I wasn't creating any content. So months and months and months went by when I was quote unquote preparing, trying to get ready, as opposed to just learning through the process and creating content and getting better as time goes on. So that over preparation and perfectionism led to procrastination. And that is something that once I understood that and once I became conscious of that, it started to help me now realize when I get stuck in those loops to back off, take a step back, ask myself, am I trying to be perfect here only because I'm afraid of the quality that I'm going to produce? If so, then let's not worry about that right now. Let's go ahead and create content, and let's go ahead and start to get better. Another part of the behavior that Dr. Tara talks about, and this was very interesting, is the aspect, for people with imposter syndrome, they begin to hide their opinions and avoiding roles. So if you think about it in a corporate setting or in a 9-to-5 job, because of the feeling of being inadequate and comparing yourself to other people and feeling like you don't belong in a specific area, a specific field, you start to hide your opinions on things. You start to hide your ideas on things because you feel like other people have better ideas and better opinions than you, so you should keep your opinions to yourself. And then you also start to avoid roles that put you in places where your opinion and your ideas have to come out because you feel like they're not any good. So that actually stunts your growth. And that's something that I realized it of myself in my corporate career, was that I was even doing it subconsciously to where I would avoid certain roles, certain situations, and certain people because I felt that they were just better than me, when in reality, I was actually producing results that were just as good, if not better than the other people. So realizing that also helped me to move on past this. Knowing what imposter syndrome is and knowing what is not imposter syndrome, and it's just the feelings that come up when you're starting something new, is very important. It's very important because what that now allows you to do is to go into new territories and new things, knowing that you're not an imposter, you're just a beginner. You're learning how to walk. Once you learn how to walk, you learn how to run. Once you learn how to run, you really don't even think about how to run anymore. You just do it. And that process and that cycle is what you go through when you start something new. So really distinguishing between what's truly imposter syndrome and what's just new and scary is very important and has helped me curate a winning mindset. Point number 2 is something that I learned from Jen Gottlieb, who wrote the book called Be Seen. And it's a personal branding book that talks about how you should really strive to bring out more of yourself. And instead of hiding and trying to sort of fit in or fly under the radar, if you want to build a personal brand that matters, a personal brand that people will remember, and a personal brand that makes an impact, then you need to bring out more of yourself and you need to quote unquote be seen. So in this book, Jen broke down the symptoms of fear. She was talking about fear in particular and how it held her back within her life, in her career, and when she wanted to build a business herself. And she mentions that fear is made up of 6 different symptoms. And all of these symptoms can feel like 6 different things, but really it's just one. It's that fear. And the first symptom is fear of missed opportunity, meaning that when we're faced with something new, when we're faced with a decision in life and we have to pick between A or B, there is a fear that we feel, and a fear of missed opportunity where we are afraid of making the wrong decision because we feel like if we make decision A, we might miss out on decision B. If we make decision B, we might miss out on the results of decision A. So being conscious of this and understanding that in life, it's a binary game. You either make a decision or you don't, or you either pick something or you don't. And we can't really pick them all. So understanding that and not letting that hold you back and being able to pick a decision and go through with it is very important because it keeps you moving, which leads into the second symptom of fear that Jen talks about, and it's comparing ourselves to other people. Feeling inadequate by comparing ourselves to others, meaning that when we go into these situations, we look at other people that are performing at a certain level, and because we are not there yet, or we don't have the skill, or rather we perceive we're not there and we perceive we don't have the skill, you start to feel inadequate and feel like somebody else is several steps ahead of you and you may never be able to catch up. So that is also one of the things that fear does to you, and that can lead to indecision, which leads into the third symptom, and that is analysis paralysis, and that's overthinking decisions. And when I realized that successful people were not necessarily smarter or more skilled than me, but rather successful people have a bias towards action, meaning that successful people want to get things done and they get things done. And when they think about ideas and they have visions, they don't let those ideas and dreams die on the vine. They execute on those ideas, whether they fail or whether they succeed, they keep going. So a lot of the successful people I've seen, a lot of the successful athletes and entrepreneurs and corporate professionals get things done, and they don't let analysis paralysis hold them back. And I did a video, if you're interested to learn more about the mindset of a successful person. The link is in the description here. The fourth symptom is perfectionism. As we talked about earlier, is believing that nothing is ever good enough, which then leads into imposter syndrome, which is feeling inadequate despite being successful, despite being skilled or an expert at something. You still feel like you're not good enough, and that at any moment you're going to be found out and everybody's going to see just how much of a fraud you are. That leads to also a desire to please, which is prioritizing other people's approval over your own worth. And this is also another symptom of fear, where, again, you're faced with a decision or a choice to move on. Instead of doing what you want, you start to think about what other people want or what other people would want you to do. And that's the thing that you start to go after. And there's a lot of friction in that. There's a lot of heaviness in that, because if you're doing something that you don't want to do, but you think other people want you to do, or you think other people expect you to do, it's not going to feel natural. There's going to be a lot of resistance, and that's going to lead to a lot of anxiety and lead to a lot of unhappiness. So identifying these symptoms helps you understand what's holding you back, and it helps you to now be conscious of all of those things, and you can actually start to move past this. The third point is to confront imposter syndrome or the symptoms of fear every single day and attack them every single day relentlessly, because these symptoms, what I've realized is that they don't go away, and they're not something that you just work through and they disappear, because as long as you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and you're trying to improve and go after things that make you grow, you're going to feel afraid. You're going to feel that fear of missed opportunity. You're going to feel that imposter syndrome. You're going to try to be perfect. All of those things are going to come up. So now that I am conscious of those things and I know what those feelings are, I'm able to recognize all of those feelings whenever I go into something new, and I'm able to attack them head on and move on despite feeling all of those, knowing that most of those things are just made up in my mind and that they're not actually real. It's things that I perceive or things that I perceive others perceive of me. So attacking that and taking daily action to wake up every single day and say that I'm going to do this. No matter how I feel, I'm going to get it done. There is a video that I watched recently by Dr. Andrew Huberman, and he was doing a interview with David Goggins. And Dr. Andrew Huberman brought up what he calls the anterior mid-singular cortex, and it's a part of your brain that recent studies have shown attributes to willpower and how much willpower people have and their ability to go through uncomfortable things and to push through painful things every single day. And Dr. Andrew Huberman mentions that everybody has the anterior mid-singular cortex, and we all of us have two of them, one on each side of the brain. And the way he explains it is that this is proof that everybody has the ability to push through and attack difficult things every single day. Everybody has the ability to develop willpower. And the way that Dr. Andrew Huberman explains it is that the anterior mid-singular cortex will grow as you go through hard things every single day. When you stop going through difficult things, when you stop going and conquering things that you don't like to do, it grows smaller. So it either gets bigger or it either gets smaller depending on what you do. So the more comfortable you are every single day and risk adverse and try to play it safe and not go after things that develop growth, the smaller that anterior mid-singular cortex is going to be in your brain. But the more you push through every single day, the larger it's going to be. So that's why professional athletes and high-performing individuals and your top-of-the-line successful people, that's why it seems like things come easy to them and that they can just wake up every single day and attack it and go after it. It's not necessarily that they're better than you or I. It's just that their anterior mid-singular cortex is developing every single day, and it's getting bigger and bigger and stronger, and it tells their brain every single day that this is just what we do. We wake up every single day, we grind, we attack it, and we go. So once I learned that from watching that video, I actually applied it to the concept of imposter syndrome and facing fears. And to me, that's now how I picture it. That's now how I envision it. It's something that if I don't face those fears and those feelings of imposter syndrome every single day and attack them viciously, they start to grow and they start to become bigger than me in a way to where now when I go into new things, I'm less likely to actually dive in and wholeheartedly execute on those things because I have not been pushing through those fears and I've not been beating them over and over again. So now I realize that every single day I have to get up and face those fears, and I have to get up and put myself in situations where I have to grow, whether that is physically, whether that is mentally, spiritually. By doing so, taking the concept of the anterior mid-singular cortex, that means that I'm going to get stronger and stronger to where those feelings no longer will hold me back from doing the things that I want to do. And that will help me accomplish my goals even faster and start to achieve at higher levels and gain even more and more success and execute upon my vision and mission. So taking that consistent action rewires my brain to overcome fear and doubt, and it gets quote unquote easier every day only because I'm getting stronger and stronger every day. If you like this episode on imposter syndrome, check out my other video that I did on the best mindset shift that has allowed me to achieve success and accomplish my goals even faster. Take care, and as always, have a wonderful day.